Hey guys, how's it going? So today I am going to do a quick review of a game called Tiny Tina's Wonderland. Now this is the kind of follow-up to Tiny Tina's, I think it was Dragon Keep or something like that, a game which released a couple of months ago. The two games aren't that similar. There's a few similarities, but they're, to be honest, two completely different games. And this game costs $60, so it is a full-priced AAA title. Obviously, it's based in the Borderlands universe, so it is created by Gearbox software and published by 2K. Full disclosure, obviously, as usual, most of the games that I cover on my channel, the developers did provide me with a key for the purposes of the review, and indeed that is the same fact here. So do take note that the developers of the game, Gearbox, did provide me with a key for the game. So thanks a lot to them for doing that. So usually I do a first impressions review, but for this one I'm not going to do a first impressions review. I have completed the review, or the game. I have completed the entire game. So yeah, I'm basically at the point where I can give you guys my full and final opinion of the game. Now, before I start with the actual game, there's one little problem, which is the same problem that I had with another game, which is Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. I think the other game is. I do have a review up for it on my channel. That is a game which is basically a Dark Souls game by Square Enix. Now, that game, the same problem that I had with that game with relating to the price, I have exactly the same problem with this game. Now, this game costs $60 in most regions. So, America, Canada, Europe, all of those places, it costs more or less $60. Now, there are a couple of places where the regional pricing is absolutely atrocious. Now, for instance, in South Africa, the game actually costs $73. So the game is literally more expensive in a third world country like South Africa than it is in a first world country like America or UK or any of those places, which is really atrocious, to be honest. It's the same problem that I had with the Stranger of Paradise game by Square Enix. So not only Square Enix are implementing some really atrocious regional pricing on their game, but 2K is doing it as well. So the game costs like $73 in South Africa. The average income in South Africa is about $300 per month. So they're literally asking 25% of a person's income per month just to buy this game. So I really think that is atrocious. The game also costs $60 in Argentina, which is also a very poor country. So honestly, I just do not like, I want to get this straight off the bat, I do not like 2K as a company. I don't like their practices. I don't like the fact that they're screwing over third world countries by charging 20, 25, sometimes even 30% of the monthly income on average for a game. And I also don't like the fact that the game is infected with de novo malware. So the game has de novo malware, which obviously I don't even need to repeat this, even though I am going to do it, because it needs to be said, each time that a game is infected with this malware, it reduces the frame rate of the game, and it also places unnecessary strain on your computer, and it literally only affects paying customers. It does not affect pirates in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, apart from the gameplay, I am not happy with the fact that 2K are such a immoral company, to be honest. But that does not enter into my opinion of the actual game, even if the developers and the publishing company are scum. I will still recommend the game if the game is good. So the question really is the game good? Is the game worth $60, or if you're in South Africa, $72? The game really is Borderlands, like really almost literally the same as Borderlands 2 or Borderlands 3. It's not as open world as Borderlands 2 or Borderlands 3. It is much more of a linear experience than those games. The game has a very slight, I would almost say, threadbare mechanic and relation to D&D games. There's a little bit of D&D mechanics thrown into the game. It's also a little bit more linear. It's not so open world, like I say, as any of the previous Borderlands games. But really, to be honest, the game is in every other perceivable way the same as Borderlands. When you start out, you can choose between a couple of classes, Spell Shot, Graveborn, like a whole bunch of different classes. And the same as in the Borderlands 1, 2, and 3 games, they basically have just a couple of active skills that are different. And then they obviously also have their own talent tree, their own specific talent tree that you can customize and all of that. So in that aspect, like I said, the game is very, very, very similar to Borderlands 2 and 3. There is a character creator, which you don't really get in Borderlands 2 or 3, so that is something that they actually added to the game instead of simply copy pasting it from Borderlands 2 or 3. You can change the voice and the body shape of your character, and you can also change the face and the hair and that kind of stuff, even though you could kind of already do that in the previous game as well. In Borderlands 2 or 3 you can get different outfits and hairstyles and that kind of stuff. In addition to that, when creating your character, you can also choose a background which has a very, very slight effect on your stats. There's strength, dexterity, intellect, wisdom, constitution, and attunement. Really, this is all superficial, because at the end of the day, all they really do is increase your crit chance, increase your spell cooldown, increase your status damage, increase your crit damage, stuff like that. So it's not really like traditional RPGs or D&D games where the strength and the dexterity, intellect, all of that actually have a huge impact on the game. It in fact has a very small and very superficial effect on the actual gameplay. But really, at the end of the day, the game is a D&D game in the story now. The game is a D&D game that is played by Tiny Tina and a couple of her friends. So you are a character inside Tiny Tina, and she is the DM, she is the dungeon master. Obviously, probably a bunch of you are already aware and familiar with the concept of D&D. So she is the DM of the D&D game. She is also the narrator in most of the game. So you are literally just a figment of her imagination, more or less. And you, right from the beginning of the game, jump into the D&D game that you can see here that is being played on the table. Now, obviously, you actually can run around and shoot stuff and do quests and all of that, but in the story of the game, in the plot of the game, you aren't actually running around. You are simply sitting here on this chair and you are playing the D&D game along with Tiny Tina. That is why the game's name is Tiny Tina's Wonderland. Basically, the entire game is a wonderland and a figment of her imagination. So that is the plot and the background of the game. Now, the game looks very, very, very open world here at the beginning, but you can trust me, the game is actually quite linear. It is exceptionally linear, especially when you compare it to some of the previous games like Borderlands 2 or 3. The game largely revolves around you jumping into a map. There is an overworld which you can move on, and you jump into different maps, and in those maps you complete encounters. So this is the overworld, and it's like, you can see it looks like you're moving your little guy around, you know, on the board that I showed you just a minute ago. You're moving your guy on the board. So this is the kind of stylized overworld that once again is in Tiny Tina's imagination and all of that. So you move around here. There's a little bit of choice. There's not a huge amount of choice. As you can see, it is linear. You can explore a little bit, but at the end of the day, it is really quite linear. There's specific landmarks on the overworld that you have to go to and that you have to unlock. And there are small collectibles and side stuff on the map as well, but really it is a very, very linear experience at the end of the day. And once you choose your map, once you choose the map that you want to go into, it then starts a separate instance. So it's a separate instance. It's basically a bunch of separate instances, and you just move from instance to instance. So that's why I say it's a really, really not open world at all. The game is actually really quite linear, very, very linear, in fact, especially when compared to the previous games. And the game is really more or less a arena shooter. It's not an open world shooter like how Borderlands 2 or 3 was. This is an arena shooter. You get dumped into an arena which you cannot escape from more often than not, about 80 or 90% of the time. You drop into an arena and you then have to either survive or you have to kill all of the enemies. And usually after fighting a couple of waves of enemies, you then have to kill a boss. Then usually a boss drops into the arena, and that's really pretty much it. Now, there are a couple of familiar characters, just like Tiny Tina. There are a couple of familiar characters and all of that, but really not a whole lot. The majority of the story obviously focus on Tiny Tina. So a lot of the really iconic characters from the previous games, Borderlands 2 and 3, aren't in this game. The vast majority of the time you are simply interacting and talking to Tiny Tina. There's not really a huge amount of I guess I can say accentuation placed on other characters. It's really just Tiny Tina, but her name is in the title of the game, so what else did you really expect? But really, at the end of the day, like I said, the game is literally Borderlands 2 or 1 or 3 copied, and there's just a couple of things added. Really, the setting of the game is pretty much the same. It's just more linear. The way that chests work, the way that guns and equipment work, all of that is still exactly the same from previous games. Some of the guns even look the same. There's a couple of enemies that look the same from the previous game. So really a lot of assets have been reused from the previous games, which in my opinion is pretty damn lazy. You can see there at the left when a quest pops up or when achievement pops up, that is also the same as the previous games. Even the way that your health and shield looks and your abilities look at the bottom left and bottom right also looks pretty much exactly the same as Borderlands 1, 2 or 3, so that is copied as well. The loot system is exactly the same. The talent tree system is pretty much exactly the same. The icons, a lot of the icons for the guns, the equipment are exactly the same. There are some new ones, but to be honest, it's exactly the same. The inventory management system is exactly the same. The shops, the shop vendors are exactly the same. The way that you buy and sell guns are exactly the same as the previous games. Honestly, it's a very close copy from Borderlands 1, 2, and 3. And there's some things removed, some things added, but really overall I would say that this game is 80 to 90% the same as Borderlands 2 or 3. It's simply in a different setting and it is a lot more linear. It is not nearly as open world as the previous games. Now, I don't know about you, but I am not really a fan of paying $60 for a copy of another game. You know, why would I pay $60 for this game when Borderlands 2 or 3 are better, more open world, more guns, more flushed out, more content. That's another thing. This game does not have a lot of content. You can complete it in about 12 hours. It's not a very big game either. Honestly, $60 for the base version of this game, because you also get a deluxe version of the game. $60 for a game that you can complete in about 12 hours is not my idea of value, to be honest, when you consider that you can get a lot more value if you buy Borderlands 2 or 3, and those games are cheaper now than $60. Obviously, when they were released, they were around $60 as well. So honestly, to be honest with you, I'm not a fan of the game. I was constantly thinking, why is this game so linear? The thing that made Borderlands 2 and 3 so good is the fact that it's so open world. It's so open. You can go where you want, do what you want, attack who you want. Whereas this game is literally just an arena shooter. You get dropped into arenas like this. The encounter clear message pops up like every couple of minutes, and then at the end you get a reward, and then you jump into your next portal. That's really the entire game. It's not open world. It is simply different encounters in different arenas that you do. So it is very, very linear, and in my opinion, I prefer, especially when it comes to Borderlands, I prefer to have an open world game rather than a linear game, simply because the previous two games, Borderlands 1 and 2 and 3, were so much more fun because of the open world thing. If you think about other very good shooters, stuff like Bulletstorm is a fantastic shooter. Prey is a fantastic shooter, even though Prey is a little bit more open world, but Bulletstorm is a fantastic shooter, and that's a very linear shooter. I still prefer open world shooters to linear shooters, and this game is not even as good as Bulletstorm, for instance, and Bulletstorm also is a linear first-person shooter. So really, at the end of the day, I cannot recommend that you pay $60 for this game, especially not if you are not yet bored of Borderlands 2 or 3, because those games are simply in each and every way better than this game. And this game, unfortunately, like I said, is atrociously priced in many third world countries like South Africa and Argentina, many other countries as well. And I simply cannot excuse the fact that people in third world countries are being screwed over like that. Even though, like I said, I don't recommend the game in any way. In any way, it is not a game worth $60. It is not as good as Borderlands 2 or 3, so I would in any way not recommend that you buy or play the game. Even if it were not for the fact that the game contains the de novo malware, which is going to affect your game and your performance of the game and your computer hardware, and also due to the fact that the game is quite unreasonably priced in many regions. So I really do appreciate the fact that 2K provided me with a key for the game, but honestly, I do not like the game. I completed the game. There is New Game Plus and all of that kind of stuff, but I am not even going to bother with that. The game simply was not as enjoyable as Borderlands 2 or 3, in my opinion. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. I just really cannot recommend this game to you. If you are looking for a game in the Borderlands universe, obviously, like I said, I would highly recommend Borderlands 2 or Borderlands 3. You can buy both of these games on my nexus.gg/LFP gaming link. I get like 2 or 3 or 4% of the purchase price, but 30% more of your money go to the developers as well. So it's not only a way to support me and the channel for free, but you are also supporting the developers of the game even more, since more of your money goes to the developers as well. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. Unfortunately, Tiny Tina's Wonderland is not a game that I can recommend, especially not for $60. If you can get the game for maybe $25 or $30 on sale, then I would recommend it. But for $60 for the base version of the game, it is simply not enjoyable at that price and not worth it at that price. So yeah guys, that's pretty much it. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.